Welcome, everyone. My name is Tim Byun. I serve as the CEO of OKCoin USA Inc. As you can see, our office is relatively new. We've turned on our platform 8 months ago. And so there's 20 strong OKCoin colleagues. I first want to acknowledge them, because without them, we wouldn't have tonight. So maybe you could all raise your hand real quick. There's 20 of us. All right. Just a quick note on the 20. I'm very fortunate that, as you may know, OKCoin started in Beijing, China in 2013. And I don't speak Chinese. So it's very difficult for me, but we have highly competent, talented, bilingual, trilingual colleagues. And we make it happen by working with our head office in Beijing. We also have an office in Hong Kong that we opened up in 2014 to serve a US dollar market, in addition to 2013 with the RMB. Well, fast forward, you know what happened with the RMB. The domestic exchange was closed in 2017 via a tap on the shoulder by the PBOC. But we are strong in working our US dollar exchange. And so if you have not signed up on okcoin.com, please do so. All right, my last plug of okcoin.com. I want to open up this evening by sharing that we have an excellent topic, excellent speakers, and it's actually going to be a great learning environment for all of us. You know, today's market reminds me of 2014. Back then, it was a rough drought, and it was actually pretty long. And so I think we're kind of witnessing similar time periods, but this is where, you know, it's a little quieter. This is where we should do our homework. This is where OKCoin should make our platform better. And so that's what we're focusing on. And tonight, it's all about Decred. I want to introduce Jake, founder of Decred.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. My name's Jake Yocom-Piatt. I've been doing Bitcoin stuff and working on Decred since 2013. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how Decred works and hopefully teach you something maybe that you didn't know or maybe that you did know. And I'll go and retread it, and you'll be surprised at what you might have learned. So who am I? I've been working in the crypto space since early 2013. I've financed, directed, and managed the build-out of BTC Suite, which is an alternative full-node Bitcoin implementation, which met with some disdain from people in the Bitcoin community. Some people really liked it, but you know, I was just trying to contribute. And I'm the Decred project lead. Decred was sort of an iteration on Bitcoin. We experienced certain things in the Bitcoin space, and we thought, wow, you know, we can do better than this. So we figured we'd iterate it and give it a go ourselves. I am the CEO of Company Zero. Company Zero is one of the major contractors for the Decred project. We build out the core infrastructure, add consensus changes, keep the wallet humming, keep the network going. And in some ways it's thankless work, but it's exciting for us. It keeps me busy and out of trouble. So what is Decred? Decred is effectively Bitcoin with a proof-of-stake governance layer. The proof-of-stake governance layer has been added to address what we saw as a crisis of governance in the context of Bitcoin. As most of you are likely aware, there was the SegWit change set and the fork that led to Bitcoin Cash, and that was a serious crisis in governance in the sense that there was a basic decision to be made. Do we implement SegWit or not? And that decision took, on the order of 3 years to make. And that, to me, that really sort of obviated a very serious problem. Making difficult decisions is something that has to happen episodically with any kind of complex project where you have a lot of people working together and you're building out infrastructure. So what we're trying to do with Decred is we're trying to iterate on what we saw as something great, which is Bitcoin, and make it so that it kept humming and it kept working a little bit more smoothly by merit of resolving disputes in a sane way. If I had to describe what Bitcoin is in a single clause, it would be gamification of timestamping. That is, that you are taking timestamps and you are turning that process into a game. Every pure proof-of-work cryptocurrency does exactly this. The mining process is a game. Everyone competes, and then someone wins, and then you move on to the next iteration of the game. This process is great because it removes a single point of control. Normally, somebody needs to time order transactions in a financial system in order to prevent people from double spending. And this removes the need for that trusted third party. This also acts as a decentralization mechanism, just to be explicit. So what have we done with Decred? Decred takes this working decentralization mechanism, the proof of work, the proof of work, and then iterates on top of it and goes, we're going to hybridize proof of work and proof of stake. We're going to take something that works, proof of work, and then we're going to add to it something that is probably the next least complex thing that we can come up with as a governance mechanism. With proof of work, it's a question of who shows up with some special computing power and how much of it do they have. The next thing to ask is, well, who holds how many coins in this system? As you're all likely aware, there are certain people in the Bitcoin space who hold an enormous number of coins and are very upset about various decisions made by the Bitcoin ecosystem. And we feel that there needs to be a balance between proof of work and the people who hold the coins. So in order to accomplish this, we have to gamify the decision-making process. And the way we do that is using this proof of stake layer. It's an opt-in system, and it's designed to align the incentives of the people who are in control of the currency, the stakeholders, the people who actually own the coins, align their interests with the decisions that are made by the network. And the idea here is that it became very clear with pure proof-of-work cryptocurrencies, primarily with Bitcoin, that those interests were not very well aligned. That is, that there are people who make large amounts of ASICs, and the people who make those large amounts of ASICs may not even have any Bitcoin, but they have an enormous amount of sovereignty in the system. And we felt that we had to sort of right the ship in order to fix that. I'm going to discuss the motivation for these changes. The motivation for these changes is, I've sort of touched on it in a couple places, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. Another way of viewing pure proof of work is that you have a single group of people, the proof of work miners, who have a monopoly on access to, or on write access to the ledger. So we have this ledger, it's full of blocks, but if I want to write to the ledger let's say I held 1 million Bitcoin, I can't write to the ledger. I need these special computer circuits in order to write to the ledger. That monopoly pushes people out, and it makes it so that it's very difficult to exert any sovereignty if you are not a proof of work miner. So how do we solve this? We create proof of stake miners. Proof of stake miners are people who can vote on these various problems that show up. And if we look to Bitcoin or other proof of work cryptocurrencies as an example, what we see is that the biggest decision that people argue about is consensus changes. Should we change this rule? Should we increase the block size? Should we add SegWit? Should we add check lock time verify, and so on? These decisions are really big, and without a consistent set of rules that we all share, it's pretty much impossible to have a working cryptocurrency. So these questions of who gets to make the decision about changing the rules, these things really matter. This is a big deal. And what we did is that we created a system where you can opt in, very similar to proof of work, where maybe you have some special circuits and you don't want to show up and do proof of work. Yeah, you can do that with Bitcoin too. But in our context, if you have coins and you want to be participating in the governance system, you're welcome to show up and do that. And it takes away some sovereignty from people like myself, developers, and also proof of work miners. And the idea is that if the people who hold the coins in the network, which are similar to, say, Class A voting shares in a corporation, if the people who hold these shares don't want something to happen, it really does beg the question, should this actually happen in the first place? And we subscribe strongly to that position and believe it should not. In order to avoid a tragedy of the commons, which was one of the other things that we experienced with Bitcoin, which was I was paying to develop BTC Suite and making zero money, and that was a unsustainable position to be in for more than maybe a couple years. So I pretty rapidly saw firsthand, wow, this is fun, but I'm losing a lot of money. So how do we right the ship on that front? And the way we go about doing that is we take 10% of every block, and we take 10% of every block, and then that goes to a development organization. We started out with this development organization being a centralized corporate entity as a stopgap, and that will be changing in the near future. We're going to be putting forward a proposal about that in the next little bit. Many birds with one stone. One thing that you can take away from looking at Bitcoin is that it solves many problems in a single stroke. And the single stroke was, by gamifying timestamping, we end up with solving a whole bunch of other problems, right? You gamify timestamping, there's your issuance mechanism, there's your censorship resistance. All of these things are sort of tied together. In 2013, Adam McKenzie wrote the original white paper for MC2, or Memcoin 2. Now, Memcoin 2 was what ultimately became Decred. And this is where this model, where you take coins, you lock a certain number of them, and then they go and then you get a ticket. That ticket goes into a rolling lottery, and then every block, 5 of these tickets are called. And if your ticket's called, you get to vote. And if you vote, you get a reward. This is very similar to the model used for proof of work. In the case of proof of work, it's a sortition on people who control these special circuits. In this case, it's a sortition on people who control the actual coins themselves. There's a number of major problems that got solved in one go here. By creating this rolling lottery, I'm sure it might be too small for you guys to read, but apologies. By gamifying this and turning it into a rolling lottery, we end up with a means of someone proving that they've sacrificed something to participate in the governance system. By locking these coins for staking, you are foregoing liquidity for the period where these coins are locked. So you can't go to the casino, exchange. I joke. I forgot I was at an exchange. Everyone here is very nice, of course. Unless you're cheating. Okay, jokes aside. Every time you vote, you get paid. I think a lot more people in the United States would be voting if they were paid to vote. Even though I think some people are paid to vote. I don't know. I don't know. Depends on what you mean by paid. Yeah. It's called lobbying. So you can also have the opportunity to create what are roughly semi-passive returns. And I say semi-passive returns because you can't just sit and, if you have 1,000 Decred, you can't just sit and then just accumulate Decred. You actually need to do something. You need to participate in the staking system, and you need to forego, your near-term liquidity on the coins that are staked. Further, what we have is our proof of stake layer overrides proof of work. And the way it does this is that there's a vote bit on every block that applies to the validity of the prior block's proof of work. So if enough stakeholders vote no on block n+1, it strips the proof of work reward from block n. So that's a very sharp stick with which you can poke a proof of work miner who is misbehaving, just in the just in the hypothetical case that they do that. We have not yet had to poke anyone with the sharp stick, but the sharp stick is there to remind people that they should behave. If you're familiar with consensus code, you might be familiar with this image. People get really passionate about it. People get very upset about it. Religions are created over stuff like this. And we feel that consensus code is really the magic that makes cryptocurrencies work. If we don't all have a shared set of rules that we agree to, we can't create a coherent blockchain. If half the room thinks one block is valid and half the room thinks it isn't, then we've got a fork, and now it becomes a question mark of, well, which one of these is correct? Which one is double spending? What's going on here? It's a serious problem. So instead of viewing it as something that can't be changed or shouldn't be changed, our view is that this stuff should be changed, albeit very carefully. You shouldn't be, throwing darts at a board and making decisions based on what number you hit. And you also shouldn't be, throwing papers down a flight of stairs in an effort to make decisions. So making these decisions and changing consensus it's a big deal, and it needs to be done very, very carefully, or else you are going to cause yourself lots of pain. You have to take these exceptional measures. In order to do this right, you need test coverage, backwards and forwards usually. So you need to test that things fail correctly. You need to make sure that the positive path is proper. The amount of work that goes into changing consensus in a safe way is pretty serious, as anyone who has touched code like this can testify. It's also something that can really divide your community. And we've made an effort with Decred to do this in a way that doesn't divide the community. I won't have time to get into the deep details of how that works, but we'll touch on it. If anyone here is familiar with the movie RoboCop, I'm a huge fan. I love the movie. And during the movie, there's a battle, which is this police officer who's been shot and killed is resurrected as a machine, and he has a serious conflict internally. Is he a machine? Is he a man? And he flops back and forth, and he has dreams, and he can't tell which one he really is. So in a way, it's a metaphor for proof of work, proof of stake. Proof of work is sort of the machine side, and proof of stake is the human side. The way it works is that you opt in, and then there's the rolling lottery. So there's a ticket pool. The ticket pool has a target size, similar to how proof of work has a target block time. The target block time, say in Bitcoin, is 10 minutes. So every one of these adjustment intervals, there will be a tally done to be how many minutes have passed from the start of the last interval versus what's our target, and that will be used to scale the difficulty. Whereas what we do here is we use a fixed ticket pool size as the target. So the target size was 40,960 tickets, and we chose 40,000 just because it didn't create like a whopping database. It wasn't too slow, it wasn't too fast. We figured it was enough tickets. Some people might not feel that way because tickets are expensive now. They're like 110 Decred, so I don't know, it's like $1,700 or something to participate in our staking system, to buy a ticket. You can do ticket splitting, but that's a whole nother slide, and I don't have a slide for that. And the way it works is that every ticket has five tickets pulled to vote. 30% of every block goes to proof of stake, so that means each person voting gets 5% of each block subsidy that they vote on. And the difficulty here changes every 12 hours, so that if the ticket pool size goes up, then the ticket price goes up, which drives the ticket pool size down. And that process allows us to establish an equilibrium. And if you look at the ticket pool size as a function of time, it's actually been relatively stable for quite some time. Each block subsidy is split three ways. The 60% to proof of work, 30% to proof of stake, and 10% to the development organization. The way we got to these numbers is, we kind of backed into it. My argument is that if you can't do it with 10%, you probably shouldn't be doing it, and that's kind of my comment on taxes. You can dial taxes all the way up to 90%, but it starts to beg the question, should you really be doing this? And so if you can't do it with 10%, probably shouldn't be doing it. So we set that at 10%. and then we're left with 90% left. And what the way we got to 60% proof of work and 30% proof of stake is that 60% proof of work is because the equipment's expensive. You got to pay to run it. There's real world costs. And the 30% proof of stake was done because if you have more than 30% proof of stake reward, the rewards for a semi-passive act become absurdly high. So as much as I think there could have been something cool if we did more proof of stake, we didn't want to make the returns comically large and then just get a bunch of people who rent-seeked on the, on the staking process. And per my comments earlier, the first vote bit on any ticket addresses the validity of the prior block's proof of work. If you want to punish proof of work miners, every block has a vote bit for this. And this is the sharp stick I was referring to. And the way the rest of our sovereignty system works is there's additional vote bits. So, let's say we want to make consensus change A. There's the first vote bit that applies to the prior blocks, and then there's a vote bit for agenda A, which is, to make some consensus change. And that's how our voting process works, is there's periods where these votes are tallied and periods where there's an upgrade going on and so on. I'll talk about Politeia for a minute. Politeia is our off-chain governance system, and the reason we created this is that consensus changes are very, very big. They're a big deal. You need to make this stuff on chain in order to prevent people from gaming them. But when it comes to all the other decision-making processes, you can go ahead and do a lot of this stuff off-chain. It's sufficient to do this off-chain. So rather than clutter the chain with this information, we created a system which is roughly... we didn't want to just create a website where it's like, oh, trust us, we're operating this website. And if you're at all familiar with the cryptocurrency space, some people censor the hell out of their subreddits. So we didn't want to just do it on Reddit. We didn't want to do it on a website. We wanted to create like an indelible record that you can't go back and change, and that's Politeia. So it is data that is anchored in our blockchain using the timestamps from our blockchain. And it serves to allow us to prove who said what when cryptographically, as opposed to relying on, good old Jake to sign transactions or something like that. And it is a general solution. Anyone here who wants to use a system like this could modify Politeia to work on their blockchain and, use it for their own governance. I'll keep the technical summary very, very short. There is a chain of hashes, or you can take the files, put them in a Merkle tree, as you can see on the image, and then you can create a Merkle path down to a Merkle root. The Merkle root gets anchored episodically into the blockchain via an op return, and that allows you to prove that a particular file existed on or before a given date. And if you're familiar with Open Timestamps, which is a Peter Todd project, if I'm not mistaken, it's sort of an iteration on that, except that the timestamps are independently verifiable. So technical summary here for this is, if you're familiar with Git, we take Git, and then you take the data in Git, and episodically you take a commit hash from Git and you anchor it into the blockchain. So this, and you also add an identity layer. This allows you to say who did what when. This can be integrated in all kinds of contexts. It's essentially free. You don't have to pay anything for this if you don't want to. We like to give stuff away, so this is us giving away technology. And there are users, administrators, proposals, and is it public? That's really all you need to do to integrate it. And the voting on Politeia is based on a snapshot of our ticket pool. This ticket pool of roughly 41,000 tickets. You take a snapshot, people vote on it, and that's how you can determine whether something passes or doesn't pass as a Politeia proposal. And this allows for quick assessment of stakeholder sentiment. So instead of, say a multi-month process for a consensus change, you're more on a multi-week process for a proposal and funding and all of that. And then the snap voting uses the commitment address on tickets so that nobody can raid a data center and steal all of your sovereignty. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got time for. Thank you so much for listening.